Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be the second half of the books that I read in the month of September. And I had some really good ones in here that I'm so glad that I read because they were just so enjoyable. The first book I want to talk about is called Wickers Bog by Mike Duran. He is the same guy who wrote the Christian horror nonfiction book that I read a month ago. I think I read it a month ago. And I liked that a lot. It went into great detail about the whole subject matter of Christianity and the horror genre. I really liked the things that he had to say about it. So this is a short story of his. I think it was only like 60 something pages. So I wanted to give it a try. This would be classified as Southern Gothic horror. So it takes place in, I think it was the Bayou, like Louisiana area, but it had to do with this old house. I don't know if it was like a plantation house or just a very large house, but it basically had like sunk into the swamp or been flooded out, and so only the very top of the house still shows. And there's all these stories that people like to tell about the house, that people had died when it flooded and their souls are still in the house. And so this grandmother tells her grandchildren to basically stay away from that area. But one day the granddaughter goes by the house and she sees a girl in the water that's surrounding the house, and she goes home and she tells her brother and her grandmother about this girl that she sees in the water. Because this book is only like 60 pages, if I say any more, I'm telling you the whole story. So I'm going to stop there. It was definitely creepy. I did like the writing style, so it does make me want to read more from Mike Duran. But because it was so short, I didn't get much out of it, so I only gave it 3 stars. The next one I'm going to talk about is this one, The Moor by Laurie King. And she writes Sherlock stories, but from Sherlock's wife's perspective. So she has a whole series of books. I don't know if the series has a name, but the wife's name is Mary Russell. I've never read anything from her before, and I had never heard of stories where Sherlock was married. So this was very interesting to read from Sherlock's wife's perspective. So I really wanted to pick this up and see how this works, because Sherlock is really understood to be kind of a non-emotional type of man and not having relationships really with people. And so I thought this was interesting. I think it was really well done, though. The relationship between the wife and Sherlock, apparently he's much older than the wife, but the wife acts more mature for her age, so it doesn't come across as that strange. But this story takes place, I want to say 20 years after the Hounds of the Baskervilles, and there have been sightings of this creepy carriage. You can kind of see it on the cover here. This carriage on the moors, and this old man who lives on the moors and knows Sherlock, he contacts Sherlock to come out to investigate what is going on the moors again. And honestly, I adored this book from the beginning to the end. The atmosphere of this is so perfect. I did read a review from somebody on Goodreads who was complaining that it's just a lot of Mary Russell and Sherlock traipsing around the moors. And I'm like, yeah, what's wrong with that? Like, that sounds like a good time to me. A lot of it is them going around the moors, especially there's a lot of scenes with Mary by herself, because Sherlock, in Sherlock fashion, sends his partner out to go do things. And so he sends her out on this decrepit horse who she has this love-hate relationship with. And she goes around the moors and she talks to people, interviews people, and she looks for evidence. And then there's another time with her and Sherlock, and they go out together and spend like a weekend on the moor. And then they stop in taverns, and it talks about the meals that they eat. Like they're cold to the bone, and they're sitting in front of the fire, and they're drinking, hot tea, and they're eating, shepherd's pie or whatever. And just the way everything was described in this book, I really felt like I was there. It was cold, it was rainy, it was miserable, and it was everything that I wanted. I really enjoyed the old man also who contacts Sherlock. I enjoyed the mystery. I just thought it was a whole lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to reading more books from this series. And I want to add that this takes place like right now. The first sightings I want to say take place in like July or August, but by the time Sherlock gets to the moors, it's September. So this is a perfect time to read this book. The next one I want to talk about is this one. This is The Iron Lance, book 1 of the Celtic, I don't know, Crusades by Stephen R. Lawhead. Y'all know I love some Stephen Lawhead because I read all the books from this series, the Skin Map books. Loved them all. His writing is just phenomenal. And this book was right up there. Totally different subject though. This is historical Christian fiction. And it is set during, I think this is the first of the Crusades. It's year like 1000. Yeah, 1095 is when this takes place. So a very long time ago. And it's kind of broken up into different parts pertaining to different characters. And there's also a more modern timeline that weaves through here featuring a character from like the 1800s, I want to say. But he is related in some way to the people of the Crusades. This book had me looking things up. I was doing all kinds of research on the Crusades. I ended up watching a documentary on TV about the Crusades. I loved the writing style. It was very engaging, even though the words that were used were really difficult because the names were such ancient names. Some of that was hard. But the actual storyline was so good. There was so much action and adventure in this book. The main character is a young Scottish lad who has to go hunt down his father and his older brothers who had went on the pilgrimage to the Holy Land because their lands had been stolen from them while they were gone. So he goes to find his family members and bring them back so they can get their lands back. So all kinds of things happen. And then he teams up with a group of monks that are going on the pilgrimage, and the monks, I loved them so much. Stephen Lawhead has a way of making me fall in love with a certain character. And in this book, it was the monks. And my gosh, the faith. It was so perfect. I just want to like tell you guys everything. I just want to spoil everything. But I have to stop. I also want to say that I was kind of reading this with Holly from Lovely Day with Holly. I will link her down below. She also loves Stephen Lawhead. But I think she's just reading so many books right now that she was like, you know what? Like, read at your own pace. It's fine. And then I ended up just devouring this book. So I do have book 2. It's right there. I will definitely be reading book 2 and then book 3 and then every other book that this man writes because it's just so good. All right, next I'm going to talk about Boo-Hoo by Renee Gutteridge. I read the first book in the series, Boo, last fall. And Boo is honestly one of my favorite Christian fiction books that I have read to date. It is such a fun, cozy, lovely, Christian faith-filled story with kooky characters. The first book is very much like a Hallmark movie with a perfect Thanksgiving setting, so it's great to read in the fall. It is just so lovely. This is book 2. This takes place a month after Boo ends. And so this takes place, it starts around Christmas time, and then it goes from Christmas to about Valentine's Day. I didn't know that going in. I was kind of hoping that this had more of a fall time frame to it. I really am such a seasonal reader, especially in the fall. I really want to read things that are set in the fall, So that threw me off a little bit with it starting out with Christmas. I was like, wait a minute, too soon. I'm not ready for that yet. Hold your horses. But I got into it and it was okay. This actual storyline, like the plot of this book, I did not enjoy as much as Boo. And the main girl character, Ainsley, who's in book 1, I did not love her in this book. She really annoyed me in this book with some of the decisions that she was making. And since this is book 2, I don't want to say anything because it might spoil book 1 for y'all. But yeah, I did not like this one as much as Boo. But it was fun to be back in this town again. This town is very homey, and you grow to really know the characters. It's very character heavy. And so you just kind of feel like you're visiting your family back home while you're reading this. So I did really enjoy that. There were some cute parts to it. This one was definitely more quirky than the first book. A little weirder, but still very much Hallmarky, you know, very cozy. So yeah, I guess that's about all I've got for this one. All right, so the last one that I'm going to talk about, this one had me feeling everything. It had me emotionally distraught. I was disturbed. I was all over the place. I did not know how to think or feel when it was over. I still don't even really know how to rate it. But the book is The Taking by Dean Koontz. So while I was reading the Christian horror nonfiction book, Mike Duran mentions Dean Koontz as a Christian who writes horror. And he put in a lot of quotes from Dean Koontz, where Dean Koontz talks about how he definitely writes from a Christian perspective, and he always has good is beating evil in his books, and faith and hope are big elements in his books. So I really wanted to read a Dean Koontz book as a Christian, because I've read several of his books before as a non-Christian, and I didn't think about those sorts of things. I wasn't paying attention to any of that. So I don't really remember noticing a Christian theme to his books. But I did look up what were some of his heavier Christian content books that are out there, and this book was recommended, and this book was available from my library, and this book takes place in the month of September, so it was perfect for me to pick up right now. But basically it starts out with rain. So this couple, I think they live in California, they're woken up in the middle of the night. There is just like a monsoon outside, which is weird because they're not in the rainy season where they're at, and there isn't like a storm happening. There's no thunder, there's no lightning. It is just a torrential downpour. Then they turn on the news and they start seeing that there are some incredible weather things happening all over the world. Just really strange, bizarre things going on. And so they spend some time in the house trying to figure out what's the plan, what's going on. And then they decide to leave the house and go into town to be with people. They feel safer if they are in a group of people than alone in their house, because their house isn't very easy to protect. So this is where it gets beyond crazy. And I want to give a lot of warnings here. You guys know I have a pretty big background in horror. I've read a wide variety of horror. I've watched so many horror movies that really had no effect on me. Didn't scare me at all. This book had me so disturbed. The things that were happening in the town, there were things happening that I was just like, I don't want to see this. I don't want to hear this. This is so horrific. It's so bad. So know that going into this book if you want to pick this book up. And I don't think I'm saying this because I'm a Christian now that these things are bothering me. I think this book would have bothered me even before because it's that horrific. I wrote down in my notes that at this part of the book, at least, it reminded me of The Mist from Stephen King, Event Horizon, the movie. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, but I would describe that as the most disturbing movie I've ever seen in my life. I hate that movie. It's so disturbing, and I never want to see it again. But parts of this book reminded me of that movie. Also, anything by H.P. Lovecraft, the weird bizarreness of the stuff that he writes was in here. Then it gets topped off with the Book of Revelation. So it was very difficult to read. but I couldn't put it down. I had to know, like, what is going on? Like, what is this? What is happening? I kept trying to come up with, like, what's the end plan here? Like, what is Dean Koontz trying to do? I don't understand. I'm completely lost. Like, I'm just, I can't even. So I pushed through, and the ending of this book blew my mind. It was a book that made me think so much, and it got me. It really got me at the end. I was like, I see what you did there, Dean Koontz. Like, you got me really good. I did not understand where he was going, and then he pulled this thing off so well at the end. So this book was an emotional, draining roller coaster that had this ending that was incredibly Christian, like very faith-based. The characters were Christian. I forgot to say that. They prayed and they talked about scripture throughout the book. I feel like there was quite a bit of Christianity in this book, which I was really surprised by because it's Dean Koontz, and I just was not connecting Dean Koontz to Christian fiction. But he definitely put it in there. He definitely pulled it off in the end. But it was wild. It was one of the wildest books that I've ever read. And honestly, I don't know if I would recommend it because it's a lot. It was a lot for me to absorb. And I don't know if there's a lot of people out there that would want to read this stuff, but it made so much sense in the end. So yeah, if you're interested in Dean Koontz and Christian horror, like straight up horror, not thriller, not suspense, horror, give it a try. If you've read this book, let me know what you thought about it, because I'm still just, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to think. It was crazy. So yeah, I'm gonna try more from Dean Koontz. There were other books on the list that I found that said that these books had Christian elements in them, so I'm gonna give other books a try and see how that goes. Anyway, guys, that is all I've got for this video. It's pretty long. I'm sorry about that. I hope y'all had a great September, and I will see y'all soon. Bye.